Hey there, history buffs. Are you ready for a trip back in the 1910s? America was on the verge of a remarkable shift. Electricity, a technology that had been slowly gaining traction for decades, was beginning to transform the way people lived. Yet for most families, this new convenience was still out of reach. Big cities were just starting to expand their electric grids, while rural communities stuck to kerosene lamps, wood-burning stoves, and a lot of hard work. What was life like before electric lights and appliances became the norm? And how did this revolutionary technology slowly make its way into homes? Hello and welcome to History of Life, where we relive history's greatest moments and the eras in between. Join us as we explore the 1910s, delving into the challenges, innovations, and real daily experiences that came before electrification's full bloom. If you'd like to see more fascinating facts, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. We love having you around, so thanks for checking us out. The first central power station in the US was Thomas Edison's Pearl Street Station, which began supplying electricity to parts of Lower Manhattan in 1882. That same year, financial titan J.P. Morgan famously had his own New York mansion wired, making it one of the first private residences in the city with electric lighting. But Edison's direct current system could only transmit power over short distances. George Westinghouse was pioneering alternating current in partnership with Nikola Tesla, drastically extending electricity's potential reach beyond a few city blocks. This sparked what newspapers called the War of the Currents. Edison publicly questioned AC safety, conducting dramatic and gruesome public demonstrations to discredit it, including the electrocution of animals and advocating for the use of AC in the electric chair. Meanwhile, Westinghouse countered with bold public displays, like illuminating the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago with over 100,000 electric lights powered by AC. This event helped showcase EC's safety and efficiency on a massive scale, winning over many skeptics. Places like Coney Island further helped change public perception of electricity. Luna Park, one of its famous amusement parks, opened in 1903 with over 250,000 electric lights, creating a dazzling nighttime spectacle. By 1908, that number had grown to 600,000 lights, and by 1912, Luna Park featured an astonishing 1.4 million electric lights, making it a glowing beacon visible from miles away. Not to be outdone, Dreamland, which opened in 1904, boasted its own 100,000 light electric tower, serving as the centerpiece of its illuminated attractions. For many visitors, especially those from rural areas, Coney Island was their first exposure to the wonders of electricity, making it feel exciting rather than intimidating. By the 1910s, AC systems proved more efficient and were paving the way for larger-scale electrification. Cities began growing their power grids, albeit at a slow pace. The first public electric streetlight in the U.S. was installed in Cleveland in 1879, using Charles F. Brush's arc lighting technology. By the 1910s, cities like Chicago and New York had networks of streetlights. Only about 10% of urban homes had any kind of connection to the grid, and in rural areas, electricity was practically non-existent. Most people were waking up at dawn because natural sunlight was their only reliable guide. Kerosene lamps were common, though they demanded constant upkeep. Tallow candles, made from animal fat, were inexpensive but smelly and smoky. Beeswax candles were cleaner and longer lasting, but they were considered a luxury for most families. Wood-burning stoves did double duty for cooking and heating, which meant chopping and hauling wood all year. In winter, families huddled around the stove or a fireplace for warmth, since the rest of the house stayed freezing. For food preservation, urban families had ice boxes, insulated wooden cabinets kept cool by blocks of ice. Ice blocks harvested from frozen lakes in winter needed to be delivered by horse-drawn wagons. In rural areas, root cellars provided a cool, dark place to store food like potatoes and carrots, while canning, salting, or drying preserved meats and vegetables. Laundry day meant hauling water, heating it over fire, and scrubbing clothes by hand, sometimes delaying the entire process if rain spoiled drying times. Dishes were washed by hand in large basins filled with water, which also had to be hauled in buckets, heated over a stove or fire, and then carefully poured. Once dusk fell, folks gathered around flickering lamps to read, sew, or share stories. Barn dances, quilting bees, and church socials were major events, often planned around the farming calendar. With limited streetlights, rural areas had to rely on moonlight or handheld torches to navigate at night. By the 1910s, electric gadgets were starting to transform daily routines. The electric iron, patented by Henry W. Seeley in 1882, made ironing easier by replacing the need for heavy cast iron tools heated over open flames. Early toasters, like General Electric's D12 from 1909, could only toast one side at a time. You'd have to flip the bread manually, but that still beat burning toast over a stovetop. Electric fans provided relief during hot city summers that no paper fan or open window could match. Vacuum cleaners, refined and popularized by William Henry Hoover, replaced the labor-intensive process of carpet beating. Companies like Thor introduced washing machines with a motorized drum. These gadgets weren't cheap, and many homes still didn't have electricity, so they were often seen as status symbols. Advertisements called them silent servants, promising to save time and effort while adding a touch of modernity to the home. The light bulb quickly became one of the most recognizable symbols of early electricity. They provided bright, reliable light without the soot, smoke, or hazards of kerosene lamps. A single bulb could light up a room more brightly and more evenly than multiple kerosene lamps combined. Tungsten filament light bulbs, perfected in the early 1910s, were a significant upgrade over earlier carbon filament bulbs, offering greater efficiency, brighter light, and longer lifespans, which helped drive the adoption of electric lighting. Electric lights were becoming standard in urban schools, libraries, and theaters, replacing older gas lamps. In wealthier neighborhoods, electric chandeliers were installed. Electric signs, or spectaculars, became a hit. These illuminated advertisements lit up large cities like New York and Chicago, using brightly lit marquees and billboards to draw crowds to theaters and stores. Times Square earned its nickname as the Great White Way because of the glowing electric billboards. Electric streetlights, night markets, extended business hours, and public events became more common, transforming urban life. Electric streetcars helped workers and shoppers navigate cities with speed and efficiency. Nearly every major city had a streetcar system. We've come a long way from kerosene lamps and wood stoves. But there's more to the story, especially when a global conflict like World War I comes into play. Let's see how that pivotal event fast-tracked electrification in America. If you're enjoying this video, we hope you can hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so we can share more captivating history tidbits with you. While cities enjoyed the convenience of electric lighting, rural America was left in the dark. Over 50% of the population lived in rural areas, and by the end of the decade, more than 90% of those homes still didn't have electricity. This meant relying on daylight, hand tools, and animal power for most tasks. Why the gap? The National Electric Light Association, founded in 1885, prioritized urban areas where profits were higher. Rural communities were considered unprofitable, so they were left out of the electric revolution. At the time, it cost up to 3 times more to extend power lines to rural areas compared to urban ones. The disparity also meant rural families paid higher costs for kerosene lamps and other non-electric alternatives. Rural households spent a big part of their income on kerosene for lighting alone. The lack of access to electricity not only limited the quality of life in rural communities, but also hindered economic development compared to their urban counterparts. But the technology came with a fair share of hurdles. the wiring systems of the 1910s were incredibly basic. Most homes used single-cloth insulation, which wasn't exactly fireproof. Fires caused by faulty installations were alarmingly common, especially in wooden homes, which made installing electricity a risky decision for many families. There were no universal safety codes, so the quality of an electrical system depended entirely on the electrician's skill and sometimes luck. The early light bulbs of the time weren't standardized either. Bulb sizes and shapes varied, meaning your lamp might not fit the bulbs your neighbor uses. On top of that, light bulbs were fragile, expensive, and could burn out quickly. Installing wiring in a single home was a significant undertaking, and that's just for installation. Add the cost of appliances, maintenance, and repairs, and it's easy to see why electricity was mostly limited to businesses and wealthier households, when many families made less than $1,000 a year. Electrocution accidents and house fires made headlines, scaring people off. Some thought electricity was bad for your health, claiming it could damage your nerves or cause fainting spells. Safety organizations and utility companies started giving practical tips, like turning off lights when leaving a room, not just to save energy, but also to avoid overheating bulbs, which could crack or start fires. World War I drastically accelerated electrification. Factories in Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia that once relied on steam and manual labor now turned to electric-powered machinery to ramp up production of weapons and supplies. This shift set new standards for speed and efficiency, creating assembly lines that would define modern industrial practices. By the end of the war, many of U.S. factories switched to using electricity for its reliability and reduced maintenance needs compared to steam power. When the war ended, factories quickly pivoted to making consumer goods like cars, refrigerators, and vacuum cleaners. Expanded electrical grids fueled the rise of household electrification. By 1919, roughly 35% of urban homes had electricity, triple what it was just a decade earlier. Electric lighting became even cheaper, making it more accessible. This affordability kick-started the adoption of electric appliances like toasters and fans, which soon became household staples. During the war, the U.S. Army relied on electric-powered switchboards to handle thousands of daily calls in its overseas operations. Telegraphs, powered by electricity, allowed messages to travel faster than ever before, keeping troops connected to command centers. Electric trains in urban areas played a critical role in the logistics of war, helping transport goods and troops. This spurred cities to invest further in electric infrastructure, ensuring smoother operations long after the war. The gradual spread of electricity in the 1910s laid the foundation for its transformative impact in the 1920s. As electricity became cheaper and more widely available, new homes were built with electrical wiring, making it easier for families to integrate it into their daily lives. Time-saving electric gadgets freed people from some of the grind of household chores, giving them more room to focus on leisure, socializing, and new interests. Radio was slowly becoming a game changer, turning quiet evenings into shared experiences filled with music, news, and live broadcasts. Electrified cities, meanwhile, illuminated the jazz age, making nightlife more vibrant and accessible than ever. Brightly lit streets, theaters, and clubs drew crowds late into the night, while extended business hours reflected the growing demand for a 24-hour city lifestyle. The 1910s might have been the warm-up, but they laid the foundation for the electric-powered lifestyle that made the Roaring '20s unforgettable. By the 1930s, electricity had reached millions more Americans, but rural areas lagged far behind. In 1935, only about 10% of farms had electricity, as private utility companies deemed rural electrification too costly. The passage of the Rural Electrification Act in 1936 changed this trajectory, and within a decade, over 40% of farms were electrified, marking a significant step toward bridging the urban-rural divide in access to modern conveniences. It's fascinating to imagine what someone in the 1910s would think of modern inventions. Even the simplest things might have seemed like science fiction to them. It's hard to picture life without electricity now, isn't it? What would you miss the most, your phone, your fridge, or just a good light to read by? Thank you for watching History of Life. We hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane. By the way, here at History of Life, we're always striving for perfection. Do you have any feedback on how we can improve? Do let us know in the comment section. And stay tuned, because next time we'll be diving into another incredible chapter of the past. Like this video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos like this, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to know when the next one comes out.